I've been waiting for. We are ready to create a character and get it into the framework. The way we do that is we go to this section of my website, the construction kit section, and go to creating player characters as it says here. You have already read the F4 article, which is at the beginning of the construction kit, and we talked about that in the map tool setup. You want to make sure that your memory is up there. It's like 30 gigs or something crazy. Don't worry, it won't, well, hopefully it won't crash your machine. I did have one of my players go blue screen on that, so hopefully that won't happen to you. It should be okay. It just allocates memory as it needs it. That's the principle of Java anyway. And in this particular article, I want to draw your attention to this highlighted portion here. This link that you see right here, this leads you to steps to download both the character builder program and the detail adder program. Both are required for this process. You don't really have, well, you do have a choice. You can create a character from base scratch, but I really don't recommend that. I did do a video for that in the past. There's no reason to. These programs are easy to use, they're free. You don't got a good reason for not using them. So do that. Follow these instructions as it says right there, install them, get them both working, create your character, make it simple. Don't go crazy with like 15 different weapons or whatever. Just do one weapon. I found this out the hard way. It does matter actually the way you build your character. Just make it a basic character if you can and then expand it later. It matters for the detail adder step, which comes next. The reason why detail adder is necessary is it puts all the information needed to create your macros into the XML, which is in the DND4E file, which is what character builder spits out. You have to do that. It it just needs that information in order to do that. A little bit of a historical note here. In the old days, in the good old days, up until the end of last decade, December 31st, 2019, we had the online character builder, the DDI offering, and that outputted perfect D&D 4e files. Nicely structured. I was able to get all the data I needed and create beautiful macros. Detail Adder kinda does the same thing. It misses some things. It misses some magic items and stuff like that. So you will have to add those later. We can talk about that later in the Arsenal video. But for now, it's 80-90% is good. It does a really good job. So good enough to start playing the game anyway. So speaking of which, let's go to the detail adder program that it spat out for me. Detail adder file, I should say. This is Vanny detail.dnd4e. So make sure that detail is in there. And once again, we want to select all of this, and I'll do a Command C to copy all that to the clipboard. And all the XML is on there. So now we can go to Map Tool proper, and I have already taken the liberty of dragging out the halfling again, the blank token, but not entirely blank, because if you look at the config, you will see I have put a handout here, and that just makes the game more interesting, more colorful. When he's starting initiative or bloodied or whatever, it gives you the option at the end, you'll see that when we finish the video, to actually output that handout to all the players. So that's kind of neat. So do that right away. That has to be done now. Well, it doesn't have to be done now, but it's easiest if you do it now. Otherwise, you'd have to add the triggers to display that handout manually later, which is an extra step which you don't need to do. So let's go and see this token here. Lib::Sparkle, which is owned by Bill, who is one of my players. The reason we have this special guest with us today is to get some macros from him. Now, I haven't actually done this yet, but I do know they share Lightning Strike in common, him and Vanny. What's going to actually happen in a later stage, you'll see. It's actually going to say, hey, Sparkle has Lightning Strike. How about I copy that? So be watching for that. So that's why he is on the map and he is visible. In order for that mechanism to work where it copies a past macro, you have to be able to see the library token. So other setup things we can do, click on the MPB. Remember, you have to do that when you load the campaign file. Make sure the setup player token down here, at the very bottom, has F4 defined as its accelerator key. If not, you can hit edit and then go to details and then assign that hotkey there. Make sure that's done, otherwise F4 won't work. as it won't when you're just pasting in the MPB. So that's ready. Make sure you've double clicked your green bar to clear the memory. And I think we're ready to go. So we can actually click on the halfling token and go F4. That brings up the field as we saw in the last PDF video. Paste in the XML, say OK, and away it goes. It's going to crunch on that data. Now, the first thing it asks about is languages known. This is a sore point for me. It's actually quite difficult to get all the languages from the D&D 4e file. So I'm going to delete this. So it's just common. And you can actually put in here manually. Not a big deal. So the speak function later can be used. My players like using that. Okay, those are the languages he can speak. Then it goes through the rest of the XML and it yanks out all the powers and the properties that it needs, all that good stuff, magic items, feats. Actually, it should ask about the feats right there. There it goes. So feats, features, and traits. This time we will say yes to go grab all that stuff. And it parses all that stuff too into data, which we will see on the notes tab of Vanny. It's going to generate the lib::Vanny over here, just like it did in the PDF video. There it goes. And we will quickly double click on him and make sure that the properties have been properly parsed out. Go to the top and yes, class sorcerer, race halfling. Init bonus is 4, hit points are 24. It did all the defenses. All that's looking good, and it does all the skills and stuff too. That looks good. The notes tab, this is where it parses. It goes through all this data here. I know this looks intimidating, but you don't have to be able to read this. The importer is going to read this, and it separates by them, the hashtag here, all the different powers. You see second chance is the first one, then lightning strike is the second one. Don't try to edit. Well, I guess you can try to edit this, but be careful. I don't. I just use the later editor in order to do that. Makes it much easier. So that's that. So we are ready to go, and we'll say okay there. And notice the attention to detail here. This token is smaller than the lib token because Vanny is small. He's a halfling. So it finds that and it does that. Let's look at the chat. These are all the records in that notes tab that we saw that it's going to do. So that looks good. And the memory looks good. It's at 2.27, but hey, why not double click it anyway? Better safe than sorry. And we will click back on Vanny, and you can click any of these buttons except for end my turn. Actually, end my turn might work too with regard to starting off the import process. So I'll just click health at random. It knows that it's supposed to be giving you a checklist. It's saying, hey, which of those powers that I actually put on your notes tab do you want to go through? And I say we go for it. Go all. But if you're scared of running out of memory, and rightly you should be, because 1.7, as I said, is very bad with memory management, this number goes up on the right, goes up pretty quickly when you're importing because it's a lot of data to go through. Just click, I don't know, maybe 5 of these or something. And then later you can run Frankenstein's Lab, import D&D 4e powers, and this will come back up again. These will not be listed then because it's saying, oh, well, you've already done those 5, so it's not going to give you the option to do, well, it shouldn't anyway. And don't, if it does, don't click them again and do another 5, another batch of 5, and so on as you're clearing your power bar. But just for the sake of expediency, let's just say okay to all of them. Processing 16 entries, sure, we'll say yes. And it goes through, and it's got second chance halfling here first, and that's looking good. We look at all the fields, and we'll say okay, and it will create a macro for us on the lib token for that. Now here it's in configuring targeting. It's asking us, well, there's something that's going to be applied, and the Rumble eval macro is what's applied as it shows in the prompt here. This is a regular D20 roll. That's what Rumble eval is. It's saved by default. And in this context, it's going to say, well, what's the new D20 roll for the guy who needs to re-roll his D20 roll? So we'll say okay to that. It's not exactly accurate. We should have chosen arranged so we can say, hey, that other guy's going to do it. But we'll see more of that later. And this is a trigger definition. When he gets hit, a reaction to getting hit who is going to run second chance? And that answer, of course, is Vanny. If we wanted to run it automatically, we can click automatic or any of these other options, which I hardly ever use, to be honest with you, but they're there if you need them. And also for a reaction critical trigger as well. So it'll ask you, and here we go. Copy Lightning Strike from. Do you want to skip this step or do you want to copy it from Sparkle? Well, yeah, we want to copy it from Sparkle because, hey, Bill is happy with Sparkle's Lightning Strike, so why don't we use it for Vanny as well? So I say we copy it. Cancel to do the copy, and it'll say down there in the chat that we copied that. And we'll just go through this Stormwalk and make sure all the fields are correct. If they're not, correct them at that point. And it's saying, well, I know I've just detected in your text for Stormwalk that somebody can do a shift. Who is that somebody? It's Vanny, and that's a range of 0 because it's not anybody else. It's him, so he's going to include self. That's how you use the configure targeting right there. And we'll say okay, and it's found another one. What do you know? Whirlwind on Sparkle. Yeah, we want to copy that over because we know Whirlwind works okay for Bill. So if he's happy with it, then hey, why not? Chromatic Orb, this is his daily power. We'll say okay for that. And here it's asking, I found somebody, something, some effect or something that's going to do damage, I think. Now, is that 1 point of damage? Do you want it as a bonus or as damage? I don't think it does 1 point of damage if I remember the text correctly, so we'll say neither. No, you got that. I got that wrong, Mr. Importer. That's not good. And the defense penalty mod, it goes through all the numbers it finds in the text. I think it's 2, even if it isn't, doesn't matter. So we can always change that later, or go back and change that later if it doesn't need to be. It's found a dazed effect, which is save ends. Let's say okay to these, and a mobilized effect, and that's also save ends. And maybe a defense penalty. If it misinterprets any of this stuff, if you say, well, wait a second, Chromatic Orb doesn't have a defense penalty, hey, no problem. Just hit cancel. No problem. And, but he does have an ongoing poison effect. Remember, we're just making stuff up here as we go along. In actual practice, what you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to say, yeah, you're going to verify that is indeed correct. Now, it doesn't do all of these, of course. If you know the spell properly, it only does one of them, so we will undo the other ones. Here it's asking if you want to link all those effects that we just configured just now. Are they a save ends all? No, they are not, so we'll say cancel to that. And this, I'm actually not sure what these halfling racial traits, this one is, the expansion trait, but hey, it's not going to do us any harm. It's just informational, so we'll say okay there. And here it's saying enter compendium text because it's not sure if this is a record or not because it's so short. It is, so we'll just say okay. There's no harm in doing the trait macros. So if you want to put extra stuff in here on how cool it is to be a halfling in the effect text, then that's fine. So we'll say okay. And it's found the small racial trait. Let's say skip for this one because that's very generic. It's good. Do you want to skip remaining searches? No, we want to be prompted. So yeah, so it doesn't matter if we do this from scratch from the importer for that small racial trait. Now it has found a save bonus for that for this. So being small. So yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's fix this range because it's just for him. So range 0. And all those other fields and all these fields for configuring target, you want to make sure that they're correct. And yes, he's including self with a range of 0. Second chance. By the way, be watching as we're importing. Make sure you're keeping an eye on your memory and that it's not going crazy. And that's actually pretty good, 3 gigs considering how far we're into the import process. But second chance, this is just describing the fact that he gets second chance. We'll say okay. I usually just rifle through all these traits and feats and stuff like that because they're mostly just informational. Nimble reaction, sure. And a defense bonus. Yeah, okay. Again, I think it's just for him. So make these corrections, and if the duration is correct, say it's only till the end of that turn, then sure. And defense bonus. Yep, it's just on him. Okay. You can cast buffs on your fellow party members. That's fine, but he's not. That's not really his style. And again, we'll just skip the copy of the sorcerer class feature because that's very generic, and it will import it. And remember, in a normal situation, before it starts doing all this trait stuff, you want to make sure all the fields are correct. Spell source, yeah. So go through all the tabs there, all 4 tabs. Make sure that they look good to you. That's the way you want to play your character. Play that particular macro. I know it's actually we'll skip the remaining searches. I know it can be a little tedious, but it really does bode well in the long run, and your character will operate better. If you have a programmer in your group, you want to ask him or her to customize these for you. Storm Soul class feature. We're getting into the class features now. That looks good. So it's found another defense bonus, and it's probably 4, I think. And yeah, there we go. It brings up the, actually that's multiple defenses right there. So that he can get done N4. So that looks good. And these are the multiple defenses, the 4 defenses you see at the top. They're checked. We'll say okay to that. And resist thunder. Very cool. So 0. The reason why I keep saying range for 1, it's assuming that you're going to cast it on somebody else, which is not the case. But if it is the case, put the proper range in there. If it's an ally within 5, say okay. Seasoned veteran feat. This is the last one. This is his only feat, I believe. So I would say okay to that. And the end turn runner for status. When he ends his turn, we want to run status to see what we did. So we'll say okay there. All characters got that. And here we have a little bit of an inconsistency. It doesn't have a name for his staff. So we'll say staff right there. Say okay. I'll take a look at that for correcting that. So it gives you the name. Is it a high crit weapon? I don't think so. And no, it's not single-handed. It can be used two-handed, so we'll do that. Here's what I was talking about. Display handout at. You can press all if you want, but that might annoy your other players to see your at when he's bloodied and when he's dead and when he's, well, hopefully he won't die, but when he reaches 0 HP. So let's just do bloodied. You don't have to uncheck the all there. It knows that you just want bloodied. And it will make that automatic. The reaction bloodied to hand out to party. And we'll say okay. It's going to chug through. Look at that. It created more buttons for us. The full suite of quick buttons. And it's given us all the output in the chat window. And we will make sure that it's done everything it's supposed to do. And that's it. He's ready to go. You can see on his library token, there's all the macros that we just went through. And it's looking good. So a little bit of customization from the programmer person in your group, maybe, to make them work a little bit better, because Chromatic Orb is going to throw all those effects that we configured at the poor enemy, and that's not correct. So you don't have to customize that with your programmer. You can actually go to undo last effects in your quick group and just undo the 2 or 3 effects which are not valid. It should only be 1 for that particular power. So that's it. That's how easy it is to create a PC token in the Macro Police box. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.